Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to my podcast or my YouTube channel. I'm your host and guide, Will Caminada, and I'm here to help you awaken, heal, and expand your consciousness. Today, I'm bringing a conversation episode. I had the pleasure to talk to Stephen Washington. Stephen is a movement master, author, and recovery advocate who's passionate about helping others navigate towards a happier and healthier life. His lifelong love and a key foundation to his own spiritual fitness is movement. And he firmly believes our relationship with our body is vital for emotional, physical, and spiritual health. So we talked a lot about this concept of movement is healing, movement is medicine, a lot about his recovery path, his spiritual awakening path. And there are so many beautiful moments and nuggets of wisdom. I'm sure you're going to love this conversation. If you resonate with the conversation, if you find any benefit in this conversation, from this conversation, make sure you share it with that one friend who will definitely resonate with the message, and enjoy the show. Hello, Stephen. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Hey, Will, lovely to be here. Great to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to connect. I'm really excited and happy to share this moment with you and to talk about your work, your book. Um, I feel like the message also that's been coming through is how movement is medicine, because I think that's maybe one of the cores of your work from what I perceive. I usually start my conversations by asking about my guest's spiritual awakening journey. I personally
Mhm.
believe that the spiritual awakening is a continuous journey, even though we might attribute to one specific moment. And I was just wondering about the title of your book, which is Recovering You, and I want to talk more about it in a little bit. But I was just wondering if there was any, if there is any correlation between the path of recovery and the spiritual awakening journey for you, if maybe they are interwoven somehow, or if the recovery path for you was a catalyst for your spiritual awakening. So if you would like to share anything that's coming to you, to your mind in relation to those, maybe draw a parallel between the two, whatever it is that
Mhm.
you're feeling.
Yeah, thank you for that question. My spiritual awakening and my recovery are partners. They're interwoven for sure. I believe that my spiritual awakening, at the beginning of my spiritual awakening, began when I got sober 21 years ago. I didn't anticipate I didn't anticipate developing a deeper connection with source energy when I got sober. I just wanted the pain to stop. I just wanted the insanity to stop. But I got so much more. I got so much more than just the arresting of active addiction. I found a deep connection with my higher power and the universe and the interconnectedness of everything. And like you said a moment ago, it really is an ongoing journey. When we talk about spiritual awakenings, I think it's not about, of course, the destination is really about the journey. And I feel as though even now, 21 years later, after I've made that decision to get sober, I'm still on this spiritual path. I'm still experiencing extreme, or not extreme, but very powerful downloads and insights and awarenesses that are taking me in different directions. Some of it totally taking me by surprise, but I think that's usually the way that the universe works. And but none of that would be possible for me, I don't think, had I not gotten sober, because I was so focused on that destructive path that it was really hard for the light to come in because I was in so much darkness.
Mhm.
So absolutely,
Mhm.
they're interrelated.
Right. And you mentioned in the interview that I watched with you and our friend Simone, you mentioned something about numbing, numbing the pain. And I would love to know from you. I feel like we can all relate to your story because in one way or another, we have some kind of addiction, or we might even unconsciously be trying to numb something. Um, what would you say for you? Maybe you can also bring that to the collective, but for you in your journey, what would you say that you were trying to numb? And why do you think that that's something that it's in the collective? Like, why would you say we're always, not always, but at some point we are trying to find some freedom?
For me, what I was trying to numb, as far as I know right now at this stage in my journey, I was trying to numb a lot of the trauma that my family had experienced, traumatic experiences. I was trying to numb feelings of shame and otherness and isolation. I was trying to numb a lot of that. And also there was just it was such a chaotic environment, from addiction to mental illness in my family, and just finding some way for me to navigate that and self-soothe. I feel as though at the core of addiction is a need to self-soothe, to self-regulate, to make oneself feel okay in the circumstances that we happen to be living in. And for me, it started off very early with things like biting my nails and wetting the bed and all kinds of things like that um, to just make me feel okay in my body. And then eventually it just evolved into other things. And I feel as though we all have coping mechanisms, and some coping mechanisms are more healthy and holistic than others. We all have something, I think, that we use to check out. Life is very complicated. Life can be very stressful. It's pulling us in so many different directions. And I was just talking about this in a workshop that I taught recently in London, where for many people, we check out by eating or drinking or smoking, relationships, sex, work, gambling, exercise, our devices, social media. There's so many things that we can attach ourselves to help us to numb ourselves out, escape, dissociate, all the things. So it's when I talk about addiction, I try to bring it out to everyone in a very broad sense, because it doesn't have to necessarily have to do with drugs or alcohol. There's so many different ways that we can check out or stimulate that part of the brain, that pleasure center of the brain, that reward system in the brain that that triggers this constant cycle of desire and hunger for some sort of high or some sort of distraction or some sort of relief.
Yeah, beautifully, beautifully put. As you were talking, I remember that in my book, I call them the numbing buttons. We all have those numbing buttons, and like you mentioned, it can be eating, work, sex, social media, so many things that we may not even be aware, because sometimes they're very subtle, sometimes they're very obvious, like with drugs or alcohol, but sometimes it's subtle. um and I think, like you said, this makes it very relatable to everybody, right? And I relate to your story too, because as a kid, I loved sugar like so much, like I could eat candies, like packs and packs of candies.
Yeah.
And today I can look back and understand that there was a kind of numbing button or coping mechanism. And also you touched on the word shame. I can relate to that too. And I think because then I was growing up and I realized I'm gay, and I'm like, well, that's not very convenient. That especially living in a country that's very like macho culture and very religious. So I feel like I've lived with shame for a long time, and it's in a way it was a recovery path as well. It's a healing journey to understand where that came from and forgive, and just reclaim that inner essence, that power that is in our souls. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about shame, maybe in your journey or just shame in general. Um,
It's such a powerful emotion. It's something that we all experience, but yet we don't talk about much. And that's why I love the work of Brene Brown, because she's put shame front and center for all of us to look at and explore within ourselves and also just culturally.
mhm,
Um, I know that for me, shame fueled my addictions. I think fear and shame definitely fueled my addictions. And what became very clear for me in my recovery journey was I was not going to be able to recover from drugs and alcohol and even cigarettes had I not begun to deal and work with my shame. And I had to work with a therapist in order to do that. I love what Brene Brown talks about when she talks about being able to identify what happens to us when we feel shame, like identifying your shame symptoms, like what happens to you physiologically when you are experiencing shame. Um, for some people, it's like they can feel it in their gut, or they can feel it in different parts of their bodies. Their palms get sweaty, their breathing changes, so many things, and it's so individual. But being able to identify that for oneself so that you can then take an action around it to help you really self-regulate, because I feel as though shame is also closely connected to the fight, flight, freeze response. And so it's also been helpful for me on my journey to uncover shame and hidden shame and not let it rule my life is by following what she says about shame needs three things to survive: silence, secrecy, and judgment.
mhm,
And when we can speak out when we are feeling shame and not keep it to ourselves, not isolate ourselves, um, and also when we can share it with someone who has earned the right to hear our shame, right? You can't just share that tender part of yourself with just anyone. But when you are able to find someone trusted that you can share the things that you feel shame about,
mhm,
uh, and they're able to extend compassion and kindness and love to you, it's also an invitation to extend to yourself kindness, compassion, and love as well. And the shame journey, like I said a moment ago, for me, it required me to work with a therapist. And I think everyone is different in terms of just how entrenched they are in their shame and how the shame is informing their lives and the decisions that they make and how they feel and how they operate. So it's definitely important to get the help that one needs when dealing with shame.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said about like secrecy and judgment, because it's almost like these are fuels for you
Mm-hmm.
to continue to
Yeah.
be ashamed or to inflate the shame within you, right? So
Yeah.
what would be, you've already mentioned it, but just to make it clearer, like what would be, if anybody's listening or watching and they're like, yeah, I'm feeling that shame.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's towards their sexuality or addiction, or something they've done in the past. What would be a practical tip or like a first step that you would suggest?
Mm. Well, being able to identify that that's what they're feeling, that's really important. Having a willingness to change that that feeling that one has and try to go from where they are to a more desired state of being, I think is very important. I think also writing about the shame is important. Putting your thoughts and feelings on paper, being able to then explore what's going on inside of you and then seeing it on paper. There's just something incredibly healing when we put pen to paper. And then again, I think it's very important to not keep it to oneself, to
Mm.
find some person, someone to talk to about it. I know for me, I talked about having a therapist to talk to about it, but also I had um, mentors and sponsors in 12-step recovery that I was able to talk about my shame with. And there's just something really powerful when you are able to connect with another human being and talk about those very tender things that you have kept buried for so long.
Mhm.
Because also what tends to happen is when you share your fears, your worries, the things that you're feel ashamed of, or guilty about, when we share them with another person, oftentimes that other person will reflect back to you their own experience with shame or with fear. And then you realize, oh, I'm not so unique. I'm not alone. What I'm experiencing is just part of the human experience. I think shame shame loves for us to be silent and isolated and in the dark. So once we reach out and share with another person, it breaks the silence. It lets the light in. It breaks the isolation, and and that in and of itself is incredibly healing.
Yeah. 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 I was gonna ask you the question about the community aspect and the 12 step um, program that you did. So you read my mind. Yeah, I think it's so important to have that community aspect, and I think at the core we just all want to be seen, right? It's like we want somebody to just say, "I see you," and I guess that has a ripple effect, right? Because then it's almost like you're giving permission for the other person in front of you to say, to share their vulnerabilities too, and provide that reflection. And I think that's very healing in itself, just to acknowledge one another. And I want to talk about movement and Qigong, but just before we go there, just one more question regarding the recovery path and addiction recovery specifically. How how is it for you to keep up with that um, state of being sober? Because similar to the spiritual awakening, it's not like, I feel like it's not like you have a badge and you're like, graduated the awakening. You know,
Mhm.
how is it for you to maintain yourself sober? And again, for anybody listening or watching, if they're in a phase where they feel like, yes, I've recovered, I'm sober, I'm in a good state, but there's always that feeling of maybe I'll go back, or it's maybe a mind battle, perhaps. Uh, I'd love for you to share your experience and maybe inspire others who might be in the same situation.
Well, you hit the nail. You hit the what's the term? You hit it right on the nose.
The nail on
This
the head, or something?
no, yeah, I can't remember the term. But you definitely identified the important aspect of it, that it's a journey. This recovery experience is a journey, and that it's something that one has to continue to work at. 21 years later, I still try to keep the principles of 12-step recovery in the foreground and prioritize it in my life. I still go to meetings. I still have regular connections with other sober people because they get it. They get what my experience is. They know what it's like to have lived the life that I've lived, and also understand where I am now, and maybe even have an idea of where I might be some ways down the road. They just understand the experience, and so it's something that I have to continue to work at. And I can't live on yesterday's recovery. I have to keep it alive. I have to keep watering it. I have to keep fertilizing it. I have to keep giving it light. And just like the spiritual journey as well, you have to continue to search, to seek, to do the work. And that's going to be different for each and every person. And I encourage each and every person to find their way and don't try to make their path match exactly like another person's path, because we all are so much alike, but yet we are different in some ways, and we need to honor that as well. And so far for me, it's been a joyful journey. Not that it hasn't had its challenges, but I tell you what, I would I would I wouldn't trade um, I wouldn't trade the challenges that I have in sobriety for anything. And I also know that what I do have today, which I think is a good life, is directly related to my recovery and my spiritual life and my spiritual fitness.
Mhm.
They're intertwined, and one enhances the other. So for anyone out there who is on their path of recovery or spiritual awakening, I just encourage you to follow your heart and keep moving forward. Change can be scary. Take a deep breath and focus on what's the next right action for you to take in the care of your body, mind, and spirit. And just trust the process. Trust the process, and also connect with people who are in the same place that you are, in the same state, with the same goals, with the same experience, and get um, benefit from their experience, their strength, and their hope.
Mm. Beautiful. I feel like you have a lot of gratitude for the path,
Mm-hmm.
despite it being up and down, which is the journey of life. But that's what I feel when I hear you. What would you say is the role of gratitude in that path?
Well, gratitude keeps my mind focused on what I have instead of what's missing, what I think is missing, what I perceive to be missing. And what I know is that the more I focus on gratitude, the more I have to be grateful for. And I don't practice gratitude perfectly every single moment of every single day, but I try to keep it. I try to keep it in the front of my mind instead of just in the back of my mind, or just having it be an afterthought. And it's not uncommon for me to move through my day and make little checklists of things that I'm grateful for, things that catch my eye, things that take my breath away, things that touches my heart, things that make me feel really present or make me feel really alive. And sometimes that things that make me feel really vulnerable and human. I don't always jump to gratitude in those moments, but I eventually come around to it.
Yeah.
Because it's just it's what we learn and what we gain from those moments in our in our dark nights of the soul is what we gain is just so profound and so tremendous.
Yeah.
And it might not all make sense in the moment, but when you have enough of those things piled up in these experiences, you know that I might not get it right now, but this is a very pivotal moment, and this is something that's very important, and gosh, I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, and I think that that gap between what happened and finding the gratitude is actually really important, because that's where the healing is happening. That's where the expansion is happening.
Yeah.
And sometimes if we just want to jump to the gratitude, we might be bypassing, positive thinking, bypassing spiritual, bypassing. So I think it's really important to just allow yourself to feel, and eventually when you find that place where you can look back and be grateful, that's a milestone, I think, in any healing journey.
It's so important to feel your feelings. It's so important to give yourself the space to feel your feelings. And I love what you just said about bypassing. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, because there's so much out there around manifestation and having the life that you want, and thinking positive thoughts, and all that's great. And it's definitely something worth setting a goal for, but also understand that sometimes life is messy.
Yeah.
Life is uncomfortable. And sometimes you have to sit in the uncomfortability and the messiness. And then you get to that to that other stuff. It's an interesting journey, this life thing.
Beautiful. So I want to link, since we're talking about the healing journey, I want to link to the movement aspect and how movement is medicine, or has been for you, in your journey, and how you now also help people to tap into this medicine, movement, body. So you were a dancer, or you are a dancer. You worked as a dancer in the past. From your bio, you worked in Broadway musicals, and I'd love for you to share a little bit about that journey from being a dancer, an artist, a performer, using your body, using your art, to becoming a Qigong instructor or movement master.
Well, I think I came out of my mother's womb dancing. Let's start there. I did, and dance helped me to feel better in my body from a very young age. Helped me feel better in the circumstances that I grew up in from a very young age. I had no idea that I was doing energy medicine on myself at that time, but that's definitely what I was doing. And so I feel really blessed that my higher power planted the seed in me of creativity and artistic expression. And that from dancing in my living room as a kid took me to dance studios in Connecticut, to dance studios in New York City, and then eventually Broadway stages and other stages around the world, performing and doing what I really love to do. I don't dance professionally anymore, but I think once you're a dancer, you're always a dancer.
Yeah.
And so what I love about dance is that it has the power to move energy within us, but also to move energy in a group and to connect with other people on a heart level. Um, and so dance has always been a big part of my life. I know the language of the body very well. And when I decided to stop dancing, or I started to get curious about what else could I do besides put dancing shoes on and dance 8 shows a week, week after week after week, I started to study as a Pilates instructor. And that made a lot of sense to me. And I loved the history of Pilates, and I loved what the method did for me, for my body, my mind, and my spirit. And I loved how empowered it made me feel. And I wanted to be able to share that with other people. So that began that journey. And then eventually I started to think about, gosh, what else could I learn what other tools could I gather to help me help other people? And then I decided to go to Chinese medicine school to become a Chinese doctor. I started a program in California only to realize that that's not what I wanted to do. But at the same time, I discovered Qigong, and that was life changing. And the way that the universe prepared this amazing, perfect situation for me was that it put me in a situation where I felt completely overwhelmed, anxiety ridden, stressed out, being in grad school, really feeling like I was on the verge of a breakdown or relapse. But I was really having a breakthrough. And one of the things that helped me during that time was the Qigong, was the medicine of the Qigong, in addition to the acupuncture and everything else I was learning at the time. But I was feeling so much energy in my body. I was feeling so much emotional energy and so much tension and stagnation of energy. And once I would walk into the classroom, and mind you, before I would walk into the classroom, I was oftentimes in my car crying, freaked out, worried about tests or worrying about being in school or questioning what I was doing. But I'd walk into the classroom and my teacher would start teaching the series, and something would change and something would shift. And then I would go home and practice it as well. And suddenly I felt like my shoulders go from here to here. I felt my racing heart start to slow down. I could feel myself breathing in a different way. And I could feel how it was affecting my mind. I was suddenly able to focus on the task at hand. And at the same time, I could feel myself pull out, zoom out, and see the big picture. And I just recognized just how powerful the medicine was, and how I knew it was something that was going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life, and how much it was enhancing my recovery. Because honestly, Will, at that time, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to survive that period of my life and not stay sober.
Mm.
I really was questioning it. And I'm amazed by what I discovered during that time and how the Qigong medicine helped me. And it's been my mission in life to help people help themselves through movement, because I know the power of it. I know the power of how it affects the body, gives us energy and vitality. I understand how it moves emotional energy. I understand how it focuses the mind and also connects us to um, the divine, allowing us to receive insights and intuition. It's a really powerful medicine, and we don't have to be experts at it in order to do it or get the benefits of it. So it's what I love to do.
Yeah, it's just amazing when you have one of those moments that you find something and you just know that
Mm-hmm.
this is it. Like, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And just for anybody who might not be familiar with Qigong. Could you explain a little bit what it is and who is it for?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, Qigong is for everyone. One of the things that I think is amazing about this practice is that it's highly adaptable. Anyone can do it, whether it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, whatever your physical limitations are. It is an ancient Chinese practice that combines flowing movements, standing posture, deep breathing, and focused intention to activate, cultivate, and circulate life force energy. When you take the word Qigong and you break it in half, Qi means energy and breath, and Gong means work or skill. And so when we practice Qigong, we become more skillful at managing our own energy. And that's our physical energy, our emotional energy, our mental energy, our spiritual energy. And in traditional Chinese medicine, everything is energy, just different manifestations of it. But it's all the same energy. And we just become more masterful at managing it because that's really important because the world it's a big place. It's incredibly stressful. There's a lot of energy moving around and we're often influenced by other people's energy. And it's important to be able to manage one's own energy, knowing where we begin and end and where the other person begins and ends and what are the barriers or boundaries in between. So Qigong is a very powerful practice to help us to do that, to cleanse and clear ourselves of energy that no longer serves us, to make space for something new, and to be able to help us to regulate. We all need and want balance in our lives, right? Some sort of balance, some sort of homeostasis, some sort of self-regulation. And Qigong is an incredible practice to help us achieve that.
Wonderful. I love that you mentioned too that it's a practice that um, works on the subtle bodies as well. It's not just the physical body, it's the emotional, the mental, the spiritual. I am just personally curious about the difference between Qigong and Tai Chi.
That's a good question, and it's asked. People ask that question a lot. My understanding is that Tai Chi is just another form of Qigong. One of the things that differentiates the two is that Tai Chi is generally a series of movements that are strung together, almost like a dance or a pattern or movement. And in Qigong, we'll take one exercise and we'll repeat it over and over and over and over again. Um, they're both very much moving meditations,
Mm-hmm.
and they're both about building energy and vitality in the body. But that's just one of the simple differences between the two.
Right. Thank you for clarifying.
Mm-hmm.
I also have another kind of personal question about it because I practice yoga um, over the last few months, pretty much every day. It's on and off. And I think I did practice. I did do a class, a Qigong class once, a Tai Chi, just to experiment with. But from what I see, I feel like yoga is more like mainstream. It's more popular maybe than Qigong or Tai Chi. Is it just my perception, or what is your opinion about that? And maybe why do you think that is?
I think you're correct. I think your assertion that yoga is more mainstream is accurate. I think that it also depends upon where you are in the world in terms of its visibility. But certainly in the West, it's something that people are still learning about. People are still discovering. People are it's becoming more and more demystified, I think. And people are understanding that it's a simple practice that really anyone can do. It is highly adaptable, and um, and it can help anyone and everyone. And I think that one of the things that links all of them together is that they're all moving meditations, right? There are opportunities to to strengthen the body and also stretch the body, work with the physicality, but also to affect the subtler energies in the body as well. So they're all powerful forms of medicine. And there also are just different correlations. I think we have the chakra system in Ayurvedic medicine, and then you also have the dantians in Chinese medicine, and there are definitely some correlations between the two. So I think there's only so many different ways to work with the body and interpret the body, and that
Yeah.
there's a lot of crossover
Yeah. Yeah.
culturally. Yeah.
And like you mentioned earlier, just dancing, just moving your body is, I feel like it's just you're allowing more energy to move through you. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it is very healing for me too. I sometimes will play my favorite 90s pop tunes in my bedroom and just dance, and I feel great. It's
Yeah.
like a type of meditation for me too. If I feel like I need to move, I'll do that. And
Yes.
for me, like more and more, this statement of movement is medicine has been more and more, I'd say, stronger for me. Because I can really feel that, because I talk a lot about expanding consciousness in terms of going back to that oneness, that divine source, but nothing is separate, right? So as you expand your consciousness, you are also expanding awareness of your body and what it can do for you in this moment, in this lifetime, right? As you identify yourself today. So can you talk a little bit about that statement, that movement is medicine, perhaps for anybody that's listening or watching, and maybe that's a new concept for them?
Right.
What would you say to them about that?
Well, movement is definitely medicine, and from a Chinese medicine standpoint, there are healing properties within the body. We all possess them, and practices like Qigong helps us to turn on those healing properties within the body. Um, and that's connected to that, what I said a moment ago about just how Qigong is a practice of that helps one self-regulate. We tend to when our bodies tend to regenerate and restore when we are more relaxed, right? When we are in that relaxed, restful state. The body does not do that when we are in fight, flight, or freeze. So that's one of the ways that we are able to activate that healing energy within the body. There's so much potential within the human body to heal itself. Not to say that the human body doesn't benefit from Western medicine and other types of healing practices, but it goes so well with all of them because it tends to the body, mind, and the spirit as well. So anyone who is on, I'm going to say, the fence about how to relate to their body, and I've met many people over the years in the work that I do, assisting or co-teaching with my husband Lee Harris. There's so many people that I meet who have explored themselves in terms of their consciousness. Maybe even emotionally, they've explored things, but they haven't brought it down into the body and integrated it with the body. And it's important that we understand that our body is our friend, and the body is something that's has been with us this whole time, and it will be with us until we take our last breath. And there are ways to work with the body in order to have it support every other aspect of us and everything else that we want to do. And it's important that we don't leave the body behind.
Mhm.
So self-care, part of self-care, and that's basically the heart of what I teach in my membership community, SWE Studio, and also in my book, Recovering You, using movement to integrate all the other work and efforts that we put into healing ourselves, it's important that we don't leave the body behind. It's like you said, it can't be separated from the other parts of ourselves, no matter how hard we try. And it's easy to want to do that because a lot of us have sustained trauma, and the body keeps the score of every traumatic thing that we experience. And it's also, when we've experienced trauma, it's a natural thing to do is to just dissociate from the body in order to help us get through that challenging, scary, threatening moment. But eventually we need to call our energy back to ourselves, and bring it all together and create a safe space and container that can hold all of who we are and all that we've experienced and all the potential that we have going forward from this moment on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you said about just being in the body, especially for those who perhaps identify themselves. I'm just going to throw labels, but, star seeds, light workers, empaths. For me, it's so important to be grounded, to be in the body. I talk a lot about embracing and embodying our multidimensionality, because it's not just about connecting spiritually or emotionally, like you said, but bringing that to the body and embodying all of that. So that's why for me, it's like a non-negotiable, every day I will move, even if it's 10 minutes. I benefit a lot from lifting weights, running, doing yoga. And I'll just tune in with my body too sometimes, like, what is it that you need today? Because I believe that there is an intelligence, a body intelligence that sometimes we take for granted. And if you share the same belief, how would you, what would you say are ways to connect with this body intelligence?
The breath. I think the breath is like the first step. I think it's a window into connecting to the body and the intelligence and the healing powers within it. From a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint, air, the breath, air is the most accessible form of qi that there is. We can go a period of time without eating or drinking, but we can't go very long without breathing. So breath is important, and that's where we get life, and that every breath is like a dance with the environment, right? We take in the oxygen, and then we put out carbon dioxide, and then the plants absorb that and then present oxygen again to the environment. And it's this circle, this cycle, this flow. So one of the ways I think we can start to connect with ourselves is just through the breath. And there's so much that we can tell about how we're feeling by how we're breathing or not breathing. So many of us walk around holding our breath. So many of us hold the breath high in the chest, and take very short, shallow breaths, maybe not even fully exhaling all the last breath out before you take more air in. So the goal is to eventually be able to have breaths be deep and full and relaxed, and allow them to be nourishing. And that has the power to help us to self-regulate and bring more balance to our body and our mind and our spirit. I mean, notice how when you're able to take deep, full breaths, you're able to think more clearly, right? Yeah. You're able to suddenly prepare the body at the end of the day for deep sleep if you just focus on your breath for 10 breaths or so. That's incredibly healing and powerful and so simple. Like I've read recently that the statistic was that we take 22,000 breaths in a day, and over a lifetime, we take over 700 million breaths.
Wow.
That's incredible. And most of it, of course, we're not even paying attention to it. And thank God we don't have to.
Yeah.
But when we do pay attention to how we breathe, it's incredibly impactful.
Yeah.
It's incredibly impactful. And it's all with intention too. It's important to include when we're trying to penetrate the body and integrate all these things within the body and bridge the gaps between the body and the mind and the spirit. It's also important to mention intention. And focused intention is really important. That's one of the things that I meant to say when we were talking about yoga and Qigong and all the other practices. One of the things that differentiates Qigong from, say, yoga is just the focused intention as we move the body, using imagery to inform how we move the body. And usually that imagery is related to nature and the world around us. So really trying to bring the outside in and let the inside go, reach out into the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. The power of intention. It's like a little switch, right? That has this giant power because the body, and you were talking about breath, and I was thinking also about how our body and the breath know what to do. Like when we're relieved, we go,
We
right?
sigh. Yeah.
Sigh. And so that's like exhale. There's the sound, which is also healing. So that's when I know that the body has this divine intelligence, and it's kind of like using the mind, putting the intention and switching that button that will improve your life and keep going, right? Because it's a practice, right? Every day, just switching that light on, keeping that intention, that awareness.
And like you said a moment ago, every little bit helps. Even if you only have a few minutes in a day to move your body, as opposed to a half an hour or an hour, that's perfect. That's still wonderful. It's worthwhile. It's better than not doing that at all.
Yeah, yeah. And also just going back to what we were talking about in the beginning about shame. And I think that also because we've been conditioned to perhaps suppress certain emotions or even certain expression of emotions, especially as a kid, right? Like don't be too loud, don't cry out loud, or even don't laugh, and these little things just get conditioned embedded in our brains, and then we grow up to be adults that we can't even sound it out when something is coming out. We just hold it tight in our throat, or we hold it in our body. So like you said, moving the body, having that awareness is just powerful beyond our comprehension, I think. Beautiful. And you also host a monthly YouTube series called Heart and Mind. So we've been talking a lot about the body, but can you talk to us a little bit about this connection, the heart and mind?
I call them heart mind moments, and they're my monthly YouTube videos. And I focus them mostly around themes around recovery. But what I try to do is I try to bridge the themes around recovery to really just everyday life, because what we deal with and talk about in recovery is the human experience as well. And so it's all applicable. So the heart and the mind, in Chinese medicine, there is a connection between the heart and the mind. They say that the heart houses the Shen, and the Shen is one of the three treasures. There's Jing, which is the body, the belly area, Qi in the center of the chest, and Shen, which is the mind, the third eye center, consciousness. And so there is a definite link between the heart and the mind. And then there's also just that connection to the physical body. So it's all, again, the same energy, just different manifestations of it.
And I'll make sure to put the links as well to your YouTube and social medias and your website and your book. as well. I have some final questions that I call them fun and deep questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just throw you some questions, and whatever comes to your mind, you just
Okay.
speak it.
Is it like rapid fire?
Kinda.
Okay. All right. I'm ready.
Right. So, what is your definition of recovery?
Mm. Definition of recovery. Wow. Um, in this moment, it's when you when you take the thing that you are addicted to or dependent upon and you remove it and you fill the space with something else, something that's more healing, more nourishing, more expansive, um, that doesn't hold the limitations that the addiction held for you. That is recovery for me.
Beautiful. And what brings you joy, Stephen?
That brings me joy. Um, hmm, a sunny day brings me joy. Um, watching the birds flying around, especially hawks in the sky. I see a lot of hawks where we live, flying around. That brings me joy. Um, our cats bring me joy. They bring me joy.
So, a hypothetical scenario, imagine that all the books in the world are going to be destroyed and deleted forever, but you can save one. Which
Oh
book would
wow!
you save and why?
Oh wow! Um, well, the first one that comes to mind would be uh, what is it? The Four Agreements? Is it yeah? That would be because I read that so long ago, and I think I've read it a few times in my life, and I still think about the principles of that book.
Yeah, me too. It's a
I
Don
still do.
Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple, but very complex at the same time. It's like you will
Yeah.
come back to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Another hypothetical situation. I assume, are you a fan of musicals?
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of the same question, but imagine that all the musicals in the world were deleted.
Uh-huh.
Which one would you say?
Which one would I save? Well, you know what I'm gonna say. If you've read
The
my bio,
Lion King.
I'm gonna save The Lion King.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite Disney movies growing up too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is the one thing that people would be surprised to know about you?
Mm. What would they be surprised? Um, Gosh, there's so many different things I could say. um, yeah, that oftentimes when I post things online, I'm smiley. All the, I'm not always like that. I have my moments when I am anything but that. But I know that it's my superpower to lift people up and to bring people joy and to motivate people. So I lean into that, and so maybe people would be surprised to know
Yeah,
that.
I can relate to that.
I
Yeah,
bet you can.
talk to my mom or my partner or my brother,
Hmm.
especially
Hmm.
the close ones, they know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. So let's suppose that we sign contracts, soul contracts before coming to this life, and then we choose what we came here to learn as well as to teach. What do you think this would be for you in this lifetime as Stephen?
What did I come here to learn and to teach?
Yes.
Oh boy. Well, I could tell you, I think, hmm, so much has happened to me in my life, and I've worked so hard to heal from a lot of it. And so I think what I teach people are the things that I need the most to learn and to practice myself. So that circles back to self-care. Self-care is at the core of my life,
Mhm.
and it's what I most need, because I was when I was growing up, I was kind of taught to tend to the needs of others,
Mm.
and then how to get back to self and prioritize yourself and your own health and well-being. So this is what I'm learning for myself and teaching others to do. But I use mindful movement and mindfulness and other practices to help people to do that.
Beautiful. And final question is called Three Truths. I borrowed from Lewis Howes. Um, and it's also a hypothetical scenario. Imagine that many years from now, you're about to make the transition from this physical realm into the spiritual realm, and all the work that you've done will be deleted. All the books, all the posts, all the videos, and you have a piece of paper in front of
Thank
you.
God. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You have a piece of paper in front of you, a pen,
Mm-hmm.
and you can write three truths. And this is what's going to live on as your
Mm.
legacy for your family, for friends, for the rest of humanity. What would be your three truths?
Well, the first two would be that I loved. The second one would be that I was loved, and that I gave it my all. I gave my life my all,
Yeah,
everything I had.
yeah, beautiful. So love, give your all while you're here in this present.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
any projects or courses or books in the pipeline that you would like to share? Maybe any more
Yeah.
books coming up?
Well, again, my book, Recovering You, Soul Care and Mindful Movement for Overcoming Addiction. You can find copies of that book. You can order it on my website, stephenwashingtonexperience.com. But you can also find links to other sources as well. There's also my online membership, SWE Studio, my monthly membership program, where I teach my core central class, Pilates Qigong Fusion. It's affordable, accessible wellness content on demand. So Pilates, Qigong, laughter medicine, meditation, and so much more, helping people to live a more joyous, healthier, more conscious life. And as far as online courses are coming up, I have one that's about to come out soon. We're about to release it. So if you go to stephenwashingtonexperience.com, you can find more information about my online courses and also sign up for a free 14-day trial of SWE Studio.
That's wonderful. And you can do it all from the comfort of your home, right?
That's right.
That,
That's right.
that's amazing. I'll make sure to put all the links in the description so you can check out the description, check out your website, follow you on Instagram, check your videos on YouTube. I saw that you have some follow along practices there too.
Mm-hmm. Lots of free content for people as well. Yep,
Yeah,
you can find all of that on my site.
perfect. So, Stephen, I want to acknowledge you, first of all, for your vulnerability in sharing your story authentically.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, for your commitment to your healing journey, your recovery path, And thirdly, for having the desire and taking the action to share your wisdom, your light, your knowledge, the tools that you've acquired, and just help humanity to find that connection within themselves. So thank you so much for sharing your light in this world.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for having me on today. Appreciate it. Great to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Much love. Thanks for watching or listening to this episode. If you would like to learn more about Stephen's work, visit his website, www.stephenwashingtonexperience.com. Follow him on Instagram at Stephen Washington Experience. Follow him on YouTube as well. As usual, you can find the links in the show's notes. And once again, if this has brought you value, please subscribe to my podcast or my YouTube channel and share it with your friends who may benefit from this episode too. And as always, keep shining your light, keep your heart open, and let love lead the way. I love you. See you in the next episode. Bye.